Big Herc916, positivity, motivation, keeping you guys laced up. And if you've been following the Young Thug situation, you know that he's in some deep shit. And the so-called homies are taking a stand, every man for himself. Now, you run around with a bunch of guys, you feed their families through whatever activity you're engaging in, and you think you have some type of loyalty. That is until you get in a situation where you don't want to do the time. See, these rappers, they glamorize crime, selling kilos of coke and robberies and murders and all this stuff. But it's a fantasy, man. It's not something that they live by, because if they did, they would be in jail like all these other rappers who are getting their heads cracked. And when you get in the feds, they will start offering you some football numbers that will make you think twice and start saying, hey, man, I got to think about my family. And that's what a lot of these guys do once they get in those situations. They're not going to do the time for you. There's nobody I know in federal custody that has a family member that will come and trace places with them to do their time for them. It's a place on this planet that is reminiscent of hell, but people try to put a pretty dressing on it like it's not that bad. It's not that bad if you didn't have a life going on the street. It's not that bad if you were homeless and maybe now you have a roof over your head and you got meals, 3 meals, and you have a job you go to. But it's hell if you had any type of inclination of what it means to really enjoy your freedoms and live a good life on the street. And I try to put that message out there because I've been there and I've been in 3 different aspects of this hell. But people, they say, hey, man, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. So you're seeing it right now with Young Thug living at the highest level, been on Billboard charts, traveled the world, and now his homies are going for the old motto, every man for himself. Check this out.
Excuse me, Your Honor. May I use the restroom, or I need to be here? I've been holding it for a long time.
It's not funny. Y'all be at ease. Yes, sir. In fact, I'll just take 5 minutes and you can go ahead. Everybody can. You come back, okay? All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Judge, I will also say that we have taken proffers from fellow gang members from Mr. Williams. Some are on this indictment, some are not. They have stated uniformly that Mr. Williams is dangerous. They are afraid of him, that if they cross him, he will kill them and their family. And they were very clear about that.
That's how the game goes, man. I mean, every man for himself, especially when you start talking about numbers. And if you have a criminal history, you will be giving the role as leadership role, which means that you will be looking at more time right off the back. And if you have any previous felonies, all that's going to count against you. Now, when they said that the gang that he was involved in proffered information that they felt like if they said anything or they feared for their families and blah blah blah. Well, proffer is a legal world. In the legal world, it has a special meaning. It refers to a meeting between defendant, his attorneys, and the prosecution. During this session, the defendant can explain his involvement in the crime. But why would a defendant do this? Simply put, a proffer may be a good negotiation tool to get the case resolved. So these co-defendants who are on this RICO conspiracy case with Young Thug are going to offer evidence to get themselves a better deal, and they're going to throw Young Thug under the bus. They're going to try to bust his head, man. And because he's in the biggest limelight for prosecution, this is a case that's going to make their career. They're going to throw out all the stops to ensure that they're the conviction, for one, kind of like how they did with Casanova 2 times. They're going to make sure they get a conviction, and it's going to most likely be a plea deal. And they're going to put him in a position where if he doesn't plea and they say, okay, well, if you don't take this plea, we're going to trial, we don't care, he's going to have his back against the wall, because it's either going to be a plea to some football number or a trial. There is no negotiating, because everybody else is already negotiating against him, and he's the biggest fish here. A lot of you guys have never been in the system. You don't know nothing about the law, so you run around shooting and doing all this stuff, and you thinking, oh man, you know, I go to prison, jail, blah, blah, blah. You don't know what you're looking at. When you start sitting in there for a couple weeks and you thinking, man, can you do this for a decade or so? A lot of you guys are going to start thinking of people you haven't seen in years that you could tell on, because that's what you guys are going to do, because you're not cut like that. You guys don't know the game and how vicious it can be, and first timers being locked up for a long time, not getting out on bail. Man, they start breaking down like an old graham cracker, crumbling. So I'm giving you guys some game while you have the opportunity to pull away from a lot of the bullshit and start paying attention to these so-called friends, people that you committed multiple crimes with, because once they get caught, if you're a bigger fish, they will throw you under the bus to save their own ass. And in this case right here, Young Thug and Gunner, the two biggest in this as far as careers, they're going to make sure they get convictions on these two guys. They're going to have these guys plead out, because they're the names. It's no different than in the Tekashi case, but see, for Tekashi, he was already a working agent. All those vehicles they were riding in were bugged and had cameras up in them. So from the gate, they were already getting evidence against that association, that clique of people he was running around with. So at any given time, they had a case already in development as far as evidence. These guys, all they're doing is going through old Instagram, old deleted Snapchats, all this stuff you thought was not in the cloud. They're going through and they're going to use all that as evidence and say that this guy was the mastermind and we need to take him off the street, and everybody else is going to get lesser sentences. He might have to plead out to who knows what, depending on his criminal history, a deal at the minimum 7, but upwards of maybe 15, and everybody else maybe get 2-3 years, 5 years. But hey, that's the legal system, and you can get mad at it if you want, but you guys don't know law. You never spent the time in a law library. You don't want to educate yourself. Therefore, you're committing these crimes, and then you throw yourself at the mercy of the court and get mad and say they're racist. Yeah, they're racist if you don't know the laws, and they're racist, but you committed the crimes. If you didn't commit the crime, you wouldn't have to put yourself in a position that you say that these people are racist and they're going to do this and that. Because if you know the law, you would think twice about busting that gun in public and robbing and doing all this crazy stuff you're doing, and you think it has no consequences. I was one of them. I went in there and like, oh man, now I'm looking, I got to plead to 12 years or go to trial and get 25. If I went to trial, I would have got 20 something years. So what do? I have to plead out. That's it. Do my time. Ain't nobody, I did it. So you guys are going to have to face, you're going to have to face that, face that judge, man. And they're going to look at you, and they're going to look at all this stuff that they have to characterize you as a defendant. And dude, there's nothing that's going to deviate them from the sentencing guidelines. See, they got a sentencing guideline. They got to stay within those guidelines. The only way they can go outside those guidelines is if somebody told. And if you tell, maybe they'll give you a couple years, but you got a 5K on you now, so your paperwork is no good. But there's places now where the whole yard is snitches, people who told 5K, people who aren't, can't walk mainline. So this is a different time and different era, man. And you kids out there, you young people, man, you keep thinking it's tough, and you got to show them pictures with guns, and you thinking you're getting away with something. You ain't getting away with shit, because the feds get a hold of you, you will plead out. And if you go to trial, you will get the book thrown at you. You will get a life sentence. Life. RICO gives you life if you go to trial. So, hey, I'm just trying to give you some game and give you a heads up on what you're looking at. And until you are in one of those places and you see what type of situation you're going to be in for some long years, you'll start thinking twice. Big Herc916.
Lockdown's over. Get your yard time in. Exclusively at FreshOutSeries.com.
Don't forget to stop by the Big Herc916 store and pick up a sticker for your car, or a patch, or a sticker for your laptop, or maybe a beanie, or read one of the many books that Big Herc916 has authored. You know how we do it.
Hello, I'm Big Herc916. Contact me for life coaching and motivational speaking.